husband first.
Yeah.
And then,
And I was talking
yeah,
to Stacy.
Yeah.
So,
I was trying to catch fish.
yeah, Ron was probably talking to you about fishing, as he does with everybody. And went back to our house that night, which we learned a little bit about his story, which you'll hear today. I'm in the shower. Ron's on like Googling him. He already knows this. I told him this. And Ron's yelling at me like, this guy is so much cooler than when he ever told us, right? Like, this got a great story. So I immediately go on LinkedIn and I'm like, hi, we met on the beach today. I promise I'm not a creeper.
Yeah.
But you would be a great speaker in my FirstGenVets class that I had already talked to you about.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
day 2 rolls around. We're driving down the beach in our golf cart. We see y'all. We're like, "Ooh, can we hang out with y'all again?" And we spend another day with their family on the beach in Puerto Riensis.
Yeah.
So Jerry knows I can't go anywhere without meeting
Yep.
someone or being connected with somebody. So this was another one of those connections. But
Most people in the world at 6 degrees of separation, with somebody with my opinion, like 2.
so I know I sent y'all a little bit of info about Joe, just so y'all can know who this elusive Joe Brown was, this random name on our syllabus, but he's a leadership consultant with a company called Solutions 21. They develop businesses through coaching and strategic and organizational planning. He's a veteran of the United States Army who he served honorably for 4 years as a Ranger and had multiple deployments to the Middle East. Prior to his service, he played in the NFL for 3 years. He was with the Seattle Seahawks. He was a Division I football player at the Ohio State University.
Don't hold that against me.
After he medically retired from the Army, he got a Master's of Science from Arkansas State. He worked in local government doing Parks and Rec and as a deputy city manager. And so now he takes all that experience and applies it to his leadership consulting. So I thought this would be great because he is a veteran. He has an amazing story, but also tying in with what we talk about here with leadership. So that's a theme that has woven throughout what we do in this class. So
Yeah.
I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, well, thank you. Thanks.
Yeah.
A great deal for having me today. Absolute honor and a privilege to be here with you guys today. I don't have a whole lot of slides because I'm just gonna really just share my story and like my perspective of going through the VA system and obtaining my master's degree. I am married, been married 20 years to my awesome wife, Stacy. It's not a whole lot of women you can meet where you meet them and you're playing college football, playing the NFL. I come home and I'm like, hey man, like, I know we just got married, but like, I think I'm gonna quit playing football and join special operations unit. It's not a whole lot of women that would be like, yeah, that's a great idea. I'm in it, let's do it. But yeah, so she could probably share a whole other story. We have 2 kids. My son Ty, he's a senior in high school, plays quarterback. I don't know, it's more proof that I married well, because I'm, evolution, we went from playing defensive line to quarterback. So yeah. So that's my son. My daughter's a sophomore. They're both athletes. Did not plan it that way. My kids, raising my kids, it's really been about ownership and creating ownership. Something you guys recognize and know well as being servicemen. And so I've just really pressed them to take ownership in whatever they do. And man, my kids growing up, like they wouldn't play video games, they wouldn't hang out on the computer, they wouldn't watch like cartoon shows, like they wanted to go like be outside, and shoot stuff, and kick a ball or catch a ball or whatever. So that's been really neat to be a part of. Yeah, I played, I left, I grew up in Arizona. I played collegiately at Ohio State. My freshman year of high school, I sat the bench in every sport I played. Like I sat the bench in every sport I played. I was pretty average. But I love to compete. I love to play. I left high school as an All-American. Could have played at any school in the country. I wanted to go to Ohio State because I wanted to play I wanted to prove to myself that I could play at the highest level. Like it wasn't good enough for me to like, I'll just play at Arizona. I'll be home and no, I want to go see if I can play against the best dudes in the country. And how are you?
You doing good up yourself?
Good.
Sorry.
You're
Just
late,
got
so you
work.
gotta introduce yourself.
I'm Will Norman. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you. Awesome. I left Ohio State, did 5 years there. Went on and signed an NFL contract with the Seahawks. I was undrafted guy, so when you're undrafted, making an NFL roster is a very, very arduous thing, very difficult. And I'll share a story with you on how I think I made a roster. Real story. So we're in the, I don't know, first week of training camp, and they drafted a kid out of Texas Tech. I shouldn't say that word here either. Chris Kasurik. And so Chris Kasurik and I, we had a meeting the night before camp started with our position coach. And he said, he sat us both down like this, and he's sitting like here, and he says, hey, I don't like either one of you. But only one of you is gonna make the roster. And he just paused awkwardly like that, and looked at both of us. And Chris like begins to try to say something to him. And he was like, I'll see you in the morning. This isn't a conversation. I just wanted to share that with you. This is awesome. Like this is I like this. So I don't know, like day 4 maybe, we're doing this drill called 9-on-7. And 9-on-7 is like a very physical drill. It is, you find out who can play and who can't play. And the offense is just running the ball and we're trying to stop it. Very physical. And it's thud. So thud is like, I'm not tackling you to the ground. I'm just gonna hit you and know that I stopped you. And then we're done. And I'm playing defensive end. And I make a move and I hit the running back like for a tackle for loss. And I thudded him and he fell over and landed on his butt. And he stands up and he throws the ball in my face, like real hard. And without hesitation, I proceeded to punch him as hard as I physically could in his face. And then choking him with my other hand. And his helmet's off, I'm choking him, he's choking me, like we're getting after him. They break it up. And I go to the sideline. And has anybody in here heard of a guy named John Randall? He's in the Hall of Fame. He's from Hearn, Texas. Went to Texas A&M Kingsville. He's probably the best defensive lineman that God ever made. He can play. Anyways, it's his first year with the Seahawks. And he puts his arm around me. Hi, how are you? What's your name?
She's our other faculty member.
Okay.
With the class.
Good to meet you. He puts his arm around me and he says, hey man, like, I really love that. But that's gonna go one of two ways. He said, you either just made the roster or your stuff won't be here in the morning. And I was like, okay. Anyways, the guy I punched was the franchise running back. I didn't realize that. A guy named Ricky Waters. He was kind of a big deal. I was not a big deal. And but so I made the roster, I believe, from that engagement of absolute violence. Yeah. So anyways, the global war on terrorism kicked off. I'm playing football and I just really felt like I should probably participate. My whole life I had been about sport and getting bigger, faster, stronger. What I didn't share is my dad's a retired brigadier general. Flew fighter jets for 26 years. Retired in the F-16 Charlie plane. My dad's dad died in the Korean War in a POW camp. I'm named after him. Joseph Clarence Brown. He was a minor league baseball player. So anyways, so there's some history there, right? Like service. And I really felt like I don't know, my football career was going well. Coach Holmgren was the head coach. He loved my like lunch pail mentality. Like that was going in the right direction. I think it was super close to like making an impact on an NFL roster. anyways, I just got married, we bought a house where I grew up in Tucson, Arizona. And I caught this lung disease called valley fever. Has anybody heard of that? Well, valley fever is rough. And so I just got married. I was about 305 pounds at the time, like not a whole lot of body fat going on, like just a absolute, like what you think a defensive lineman looks like in the NFL. And I went from like 305 to about 280, like in 2-3 weeks. And my wife had never seen me sick. I don't really ever get sick. Yeah. And we get married and I'm like, I can't move type of sick. And she's like, man, like, are you okay? I'm like, no, I'm not. And sick. She takes me to the doctor like twice. They misdiagnosed me twice. On the second time, it was a Friday, and they said, hey, you have lung cancer. That's what we think you have. But we're not gonna really know until Monday. Like they told me that on a Friday, and I had to hang out with that all weekend. Like, think about that for a second. So all weekend we're like trying to figure out how I have lung cancer because I've never smoked, never done drugs. Like, how's that possible? I go back to the doctor, and they're like, hey, yeah, like just kidding, like you don't have cancer, but you have this thing called valley fever. And it's a lung infection, and you've lost about 15% of the function of your left lung. And about 40% of people who get valley fever don't know they have it. It kills older people. Like it was a serious thing. So I went on and got I went down to like, I don't know, 270 pounds, 265 maybe. And at that point I decided like, hey, like this whole Army service thing that I've been blowing off, kind of just doing the football thing. Like obviously somebody's trying to get my attention to make me change my career. And so at that point I took it as a yeah, like, hey, this is a sign for me to go do something else. So committed to that, got ready for the Army, trained, went through all that stuff. Got to my unit, deployed several times. Man, going through Ranger training, going through that whole process was really the most humbling thing I've ever done in my entire life. Especially as an enlisted guy. I was 26 years old. So kind of an old man in regards to like infantry stuff. And just had to totally reform my body. And so like when I got done with my Ranger Indoctrination program, I was 208 pounds. So lost about 100 pounds. I remember my wife was like, man, you look disgusting. Not what I thought she was gonna say. I like, I got a body by Jake right now. Anyways, yeah, so I go through that process, and really some key words for me is like teamwork and selflessness, right? Like, and as an athlete my whole life, you'd think that you would know what teamwork is and what that feels like and looks like. But I think my time in the regiment really highlighted what that looks like and feels like, and what it should look like and feel like. And I learned more about myself in that 4 years than I had learned in 15 years of playing football. It was remarkable. Long story short, I left the regiment about 8 months before I was going to get out of the Army, to go start graduate school, because I had this plan of going back in the NFL and long snapping. And so I'm like, yeah, I'll go down to the Stone Education Center there on Fort Lewis, start grad school, be good to go. And so long story, I transitioned to another light infantry unit. It was non-deployable. I was there for about 3 weeks, and George Bush got on TV and said, hey, we're doing this thing called the surge. And then the news got even better, and they're like, hey, like, we sent you to that non-deployable unit, but they're gonna deploy. So like, congratulations. And yeah, it was a super interesting moment in my life, because man, I couldn't have been more disappointed. It's something I had no control over. And I had a choice, like I could pout about it, I could try to figure a way out of it. Or I could go and try to be a light to dudes that had no idea how to train a fight. And I was an E5 at the time. And I very quickly learned that I knew more about fire support as an E5 from the Ranger Regiment than like Colonel Snuffy knew at 2ID. Anyways, and so I deployed, and it was really incredible, as far as just being able to use resources and do things that I was trained to do, to be able to help dudes around me. And that deployment in 2007, we were stayed in the fire base, in Southeast Baghdad, right off of, just south of like, Senators, in Yamama, kind of in that little area. Anyways, I was doing all kinds of like officer duties. It was interesting. I got offered a field commission to second lieutenant during that deployment. And they were gonna send me to West Point to teach fire support and coach football. Yeah, and it was like a 6-year like commitment, and I was talking to my dad on the sat phone, and he's like, no, you need to do like 3 years so you can get out and go coach football full time. I'm like, yeah, good idea. Anyways, so on August 1st, 2007, we got called on a mission, and we were helping some other infantry unit, and I was conducting an airstrike, calling in my flot, and I fell 3 stories through an air shaft, stair shaft. And I couldn't talk and couldn't walk for about 10 days. So I was in the fight, communicating with aircraft. We're about to shoot a Hellfire missile on some dudes at an intersection. And then I wake up, I'm in the hospital bed in Germany. And my first conscious thought was, the nurse says to me, she said, hey, Sergeant Brown, you've been injured in combat. Can you tell us who these actors are? And I remember thinking, like, damn, you got the wrong guy. Like, even if I could speak, it's not like Denzel Washington. I'm out. I'm pretty sneaky when it comes to that stuff. And I immediately felt a whole bunch of anxiety, like more anxiety than I've ever felt in my entire life. Like, I'm laying in this hospital bed, I can't talk. I realized I can't move. I could move, but I couldn't walk. And I knew my time and space, and I knew like my wife was about to have our daughter, and it was just a terrible, terrible feeling. So I transitioned, went to Walter Reed, then I went to BAMC down in San Antonio, regained my ability to speak about 7 days, I think it is, or was. And that's kind of when this next chapter kicked off for me, which I kind of equate to how I grew up. Like nothing was super easy for me growing up, to my experience in the military and in athletics. And that was, I shared that a little bit earlier. Like, I remember having kind of a conscious conversation with myself in my hospital bed. Like, you can go over there and sit in the corner and suck your thumb and feel sorry for yourself for the rest of your life. I'm sure nobody would mind. People would be fine with it. Or we can pull up the straps and we can compete at this thing a little bit. But her answer, the nurse's answer of like, hey, you're going to be in this hospital for 2.5 years. It's unacceptable. Like, I can't do this. And I remember kind of just feeling rage and like upset about that process. So I navigated that process. I went through all the rehab, did all the stuff I was supposed to do. And I was trying to get back to my home record so that I could apply for the next chapter. I wrote several letters to Senator McCain, who was my home record senator at the time, asking for permission to leave BAMC and go to my house so I could facilitate like the next chapter of my life, right? Which, again, I remember sitting in my bed and doing some reflection on like, hey, what's the next phase? Like, what's that look like? Because I don't think I'm playing football ever again. I'm not going to West Point to teach anything. Like, what is that? And then I landed on like, hey, I'm gonna go coach college football. And I need a master's degree to do that. And so like, what's that look like? And I kind of went from, I started with the end in mind and worked my way backwards, right? And I still have the piece of paper that I was like drawing. Like, it's kind of cute when I look at it now, because like half my brain worked, like I like scribbled like my intent on how I was gonna transition. And I don't really remember writing that, but it was definitely my handwriting. So it's kind of weird, like that I was like subconsciously working through trying to solve for X, screwed up, right? Anyways, just transitioned really well, the best I knew how and could. Got back to Arizona, Tucson. I must have sent out 250 emails with my resume, like my intent on what I wanted to do. Hey, I want to go to graduate school. I want to coach football. This is what I've done so far. Guess how many replies I got back? I think 2 or 3. It was no more than 3. One was Dabo Sweeney, and the other one was a guy named John Arcee, who hired me. John Arcee hired me because his son was a Marine. Didn't know me from Steve. So I show up there, I PCS my stuff from Tucson to Jonesboro, Arkansas. We rented a house over the internet. Not a great idea to do that. Yeah, so we show up that night, and it was bad. It was like, you could kind of tell it was in the hood. And then I woke up at like 2 a.m. and my wife was crying like on the floor of this house as she found fleas in my daughter's hair. Yeah, so like that's kind of how we like kicked it off in Jonesboro. Anyways, so I had initiated like, hey, I'm gonna go to Arkansas State. I'm gonna coach. I'm gonna have a grad assistant stipend there. It's not much, like $10,000. And then I did the math on like GI Bill or voc rehab through the VA, and I kind of figured that out myself. Hey, I'm gonna do the VA voc rehab thing. So the day comes for me to like go authenticate my school stuff with Arkansas State. So I drive down to Little Rock. Sorry. I drive down to Little Rock, and I remember telling my wife, hey, I gotta go do this to get this school stuff taken care of. It'll be like 20 minutes. The drive will be like an hour and a half, like no big deal. I spent 4 hours with this dude from the VA, and his name was Tom Scott. And to this day, like sitting across Tom Scott, I had every emotion. Like I wanted to slam his face on the counter. I wanted to beat his ass. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to like go hang out with him. It was crazy. But like I want to bring up something called EQ, right? Emotional intelligence, power skill in corporate America. And I didn't know what that was at the time, but that's what I exhibited this day is that. Like, because I really wanted to like get rid of him. Like, so here I'm sitting across from you. You don't know me from Steve. I just moved my whole family across the country. Right? Like 6 months ago, I was like getting rid of bad people. Now I'm sitting across from you, and you're telling me I'm not ready for grad school. Like you had a severe brain injury. Like I don't think you're ready for this. I don't think you can do it. And then we get to like, well, hey, like, here's my cool book that VA wrote in 1975, like chapter 14, paragraph 3, appendix C. It says that, you know, you already have a degree. So like voc rehab can't pay for your master's degree. I'm like, huh, like when was that book written, Mr. Scott? I'm like, bro, it's 2008. Like you recognize like people need to have like advanced degrees to like support their families, right? So like we go back and forth, like I'm not leaving your office. Like, you need to understand. And so like, we have this conversation and we finally land on, this is what we landed on. He'd probably get fired if like people knew the real story. And he was like, well, will you help me write a letter to my supervisor? Like approving for us to pay for graduate school? I'm like, yeah, I guess, sure. And so like we sat on a dry erase board in this dude's office and wrote out like my intent of grad school and like how I needed it, why I needed it. And he drafted this letter like in my presence. And I'm like, I want to watch you email that to your boss. And anyways, he did. And I got approved and I got passed on to this lady named Susan Tonyman. And Susan Tonyman ran the Beck Pride Center, which was not even close to what y'all have here as a resource. It was like a Kwanzaa hut, like side of a field somewhere. But she was like in charge of kind of taking me and like making sure my grades were right and if I had any accommodations. And I had this long list of accommodations, none of which I ever used. And like, it's kind of funny, but about 3 years ago, Susan Tonyman walked into the doors of the Parks Department that I ran. It was cool. And she cried. It was really cool to see her, but, just really no resources like, and it was, everything went through the VA. I had to do all that paperwork. I had to do the emails and the contacting and like, that was all on me to do. And what I do remember, I want to share this with you guys, but I navigated grad school, got a 4.0. And I saw Tom Scott as I was leaving. And he pulled me aside and he was like, hey, I just want to tell you like how proud I am of you. And I also want to tell you that like, since you were such an asshole that day, that's what he said. He said, we've authenticated 17 more veterans to go through that program for graduate school. And so it was really cool. It was neat. And I think the moral of the story there is like, believe your convictions, be nice about it. I mean, I had every opportunity in that exchange to be not friendly, and it probably wouldn't have ended well. Like, I can totally see how that exchange could have gone from like not only are you not going to grad school, but like you're like going to jail. And that's what's sad about that whole situation. It's like, man, if I didn't have just that emotional intelligence to be able to understand the presence in the moment that I was in, and be able to articulate my intent and where I was at, where I needed to be, like help me get to where I need to be. I'm not telling you like you got to do it, but like help me, please. And I remember telling him like, I feel sorry for you that you have to sit behind your desk every day and do what you just did today. Like that's tough. I wouldn't want to do that. You couldn't pay me to do that. That's tough. Anyways, got through graduate school. Very difficult situation for me, grad school, because I was working that GA job, full-time grad student, and I had 2 babies and a wife. Okay. I don't think I slept for 2 years. And oh, by the way, the VA had put me on like 11 medications. And I was dealing with my own demons. Like my last deployment was not blueberries and whipped cream. Like it was tough. Very, very tough days and evenings. And so I think back on that VA experience, the graduate school experience, and I think at one point, like I'd love to hear my wife's version of that, because it was tough, man. I mean, there was a lot of nights where like I didn't sleep at all. I didn't sleep for like days on days. But most of that was because of my GA job, and then like, when do you study? And I couldn't study with anything around me because of whatever was going on with like my PTSD and all of that. So like, I figured out again, to just like awareness, self-awareness. I would go to the library at Jonesboro, Arkansas, in Arkansas State, their old nasty library. And there was a little cubby under the stairwell with a desk and a chair, and I would sit there and study. And that's like, that was my spot. Yeah. And that's different for everybody, you know what I'm saying? So figure whatever that is for you, like figure that out. But yeah, that was a really difficult period of my life. And towards the end of grad school, I started getting like full-time coaching job opportunities. And my wife one night says, "Hey, like, can we talk real quick?" And I'm like, yeah. Kids were asleep. It was like 11:30 at night. And we sit down at the table that we bought when we got married, that we still have. But yeah, I still like kind of get emotional about it. Like that table has seen a lot of dinners and a lot of serious conversations. And she was like, "Hey, listen, like, this coaching thing sucks. Like, I almost don't like it as much as I didn't like the Army. But like, if you want to coach, cool. But like we're not going to stay married. We can't do it." And so like we talked till like 3 o'clock in the morning that night. And you guys gotta understand something about me, like coaching college football for me felt like it was something God made me to do. Like I could be there all day long. I felt like I was there for 10 minutes. But I knew in the back of my heart, like, I'm gonna get a full-time coaching job. I'm never gonna see her. I'm never gonna see my kids. And so that night I agreed to quit coaching, and I had no plan. None. The only plan I had was to finish grad school. I had 2 classes. And so, just working on those classes. And I met a guy at a barbecue pit randomly who was a parks director, and he played college football. And so we started talking, and he was like, "I think you would like what I do." And I was like, what do you, like, tell me about it. And I'm like, yeah, like, that's kind of how I grew up. Like, I grew up like just at a park playing with balls, like using my imagination. Like, yeah. And so I started working for him. I quit my GA job, and I worked for him as an intern, making $9 an hour, painting fields, going to youth sporting games, working concession stand. I did all kinds of stuff. And then he gave me one task that changed my life. And the task was, the community had built a skate park, and they put the skate park in a downtown Jonesboro. And it was concurrent with developers and skaters. Well, those two things don't mix. And so one particular evening, a skater decided he got mad at somebody on the development side across the street, and they took skateboards to this development and busted all the MEP and made a mess. Well, the general contractor for that job took a backhoe to the skate park that was all modular and crushed. Well, litigation took place, and the city was given like $50,000 to put in this new skate park. And in between time, the city had built another skate park in another park that was all concrete. And so the parks director said, "Hey, I want you to take this money and figure out the best way to add this on to the existing skate park." Like, me to do this? I'm like, dude, like, I've never skateboarded in my life. And so anyways, I found myself doing the skate park improvement. And it was kind of like hanging out in Iraq with like the local. Seriously. So what I did was, I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna go to the skate park, and I'm gonna engage the skaters, and I'm gonna make a skate park like committee, and I'm gonna ask them what they want to see." And so that's what I did. It was super cool. I might have got some contact highs. It was kind of weird. As I got to know them, I was like, "Hey, listen, guys, like, you can't do that stuff when we're like hanging out," right? And so anyways, I really fell in love with that process, and like just doing that and seeing that take place. And there was a lot of parallels to like some things we did in the military. And then anyways, I left there, got a full-time job in a city called Harper Heights, Texas. And that's where I started my parks career. And so I was a parks director for about 18 years. Did all kinds of different things. Early in my career, I challenged the parks director my first job. And I was, pretty involved with the VA in that process, and had quite a few buddies kind of really struggle in the transition process, and wanted to create some programs through Parks and Recs. And it was the answer I got was, well, can't nonprofits do that? Or, can't so and so do that? Or isn't the VA doing something with that? And then I said to him, I said, well, here's the deal, man. Like, if you were to like Google a mission statement for Parks and Rec, somewhere in there you see inclusiveness, inclusion, we include all, but really we don't. We make programs for kids, we make programs for adults, we make programs for old people because they vote. And anyways, I pretty much sui sponte and figured out a way to create an adaptive sports program. And we did wheelchair basketball, wheelchair, you name it, and wheelchair we did. It was cool. Program still lives today. It's called the Superhero Program. Worked through the VA quite a bit, try to get that going. That was pretty arduous. But anyways, bottom line was from that process, I was like, hey, like the reason veterans are committing suicide like they are is they're not engaged in their communities. And they're not gonna go to the VA. They're not doing that. Like, you gotta engage in their own communities through these programs. And so that was the intent of that program. It was really cool. It was a lot of fun. So yeah, spent a good 20 years doing that. I have this weird picture of grass and like a pretty tree. That's because I'm a master gardener. I know you never guessed that.
You're a lawn dad.
Oh, I crush it. So I want to share that with you guys because it might be applicable. Prior to my military experience, like I hated freaking yard work. Like it's not something that like I participated in at all. And then I go to war a bunch of times and like all of a sudden like I find value in like precision and like I really don't work out at all like I used to. Like it's not something that we can talk about that too, but like working out for me is like I walk 6 days a week for now. No music, no nothing. It's just me and walking. But gardening is awesome because it's the pursuit of excellence and it doesn't talk back. It's responsive. There's a little bit of science in it. And so it's really fun. I really enjoy doing it. So I don't know. I think as a veteran, when you're a soldier, you're pursuing excellence. You're trying to be the best at whatever you do. And then when that door closes, like, what's the answer? And I think it's different for everybody. Like, there's no biblical answer for everybody. But my advice would be like, find something that you're passionate, that you care about. And if that's coaching in youth soccer leagues, do it. That's gardening, crush it. If that's shooting guns, do it. I left the military. I had a really severe brain injury, and I never shot guns again. And then my son one day, he turns 18 in November. About 2 years ago, he was like, "Hey, Dad, how come you never shoot guns anymore?" It's like, I think it was my injury and the overpressure. I don't know that would feel great. And he said, "Can we try? I'd love to learn how to shoot guns." I'm like, challenge accepted. So I go double ear pro, and it's been awesome. And I've really fallen back in love with that. And so we go quite a bit. And it's fun, he's left-handed, but he throws the football right-handed. But he can shoot both ways. Like a gift. I'm like, dude, people train to do that. Yeah. Just so you know. And he's like supernatural at it. And he's long and lanky, so it looks kind of funny, but yeah, so anyways, my advice to you guys would be find something that you're passionate about doing. Spend time and think about that. What is it that I like to do? And I like to ask people this question. Like, who is Montaigne without her job title and without her affiliation with Texas A&M? And so you can ask yourself that same question, like, who are you without your current title or without affiliation with whatever company? And if that question's hard to answer, if it's like, man, like all my identity is in what I do, it's not super healthy. Like burnout in corporate America is like a real thing. Right. And there's a lot of studs out there that think like, yeah, like I'm immune from that. Okay, let me know how that works. Because it will catch up to you. And so it's really, I think you guys are in a great spot of find out what you're passionate about, something you can do and create identity outside of what you want to do as a career. Important. So I'm coaching a guy that's actually going through the PhD program here. Super weird. But him and I were both in 275 together. Didn't know each other. He was in the wrecking facility. He was a sniper. Dude's an executive for a wood lumber company. Randomly get assigned to coach him, and we find all this stuff out, like similarities. Anyways, without saying too much, I want to make the point, but like he was experiencing frustration. He was experiencing some burnout. And several questions later, we get to like, dude's super passionate about jujitsu and wrestling. Like that was something he really did as a young child, and like did when he was in the regiment and got into corporate America. Is not doing it. Well, he's doing it again, like full force. And it's changed his entire outlook. Right. So put some thought into that. I'm going to share a few more things with you guys. This is a quote from my favorite book, The Art of War. I feel like obviously the context is war, right? But it's super applicable as a husband, a wife, a brother, a son, fill in the blank. Like who here likes to win? If you don't raise your hand, you're lying, right? Like, so, but why do people put themselves in situations where they could be defeated? They could fail. So think about this a little bit. Like, hey man, how can I put myself in a situation where I can be successful at whatever I do? So I love this quote because it connects so well to life, right? And we're not going to win all the time. Like, you know, I've been married 20 years. Like, well, I have the same with my wife. Like, I may not like you right now, but I still love you, right? Like, it's not always blueberries and whipped cream. Like, and same thing in your work life. Like, there may be things. You may suck in some areas. You may not do so well in a certain area or certain project. You know, things aren't going to always go your way. But ask yourself, am I creating habits to where defeat would be really tough? Right? You might meet me on my worst day, but am I creating habits to where I'm going to be successful at whatever I do? And those habits are different for everybody, but we can talk about that. I shared some of this. I want to share this with you guys. This is something that I came up with on my own in regards to, like, you won't find this in Google anywhere. This is what I call the 6 warrior components to life. And I feel like if you can create awareness and understanding of these 6 things, you'll probably be pretty successful whatever you do. Okay. And I'll go through these things with you. Goals. Like, who here does goals? who here can really raise their hand and say, hey, yeah, I have goals on my wall at my house?
I put my whiteboard up in my house.
This is a really, this is a big one. Like, people don't do this. And so there's something called VAE, right? Vision, alignment, execution. So like, you can have vision, alignment, execution. You gotta have those things to be successful in life. It's really difficult to have vision or alignment if you don't have goals. Like, what are you working towards if we don't have these? So like, something I started doing with my kids when they were about 5 years old was writing down like annual goals. And we still do it today. I could show you on my phone a picture of my daughter's goals for her basketball season coming up. But we gotta write those goals out, and then whatever the goal is, like, what are the action steps to help you get to that goal? Like, if you say, hey, I want to be AB honor roll, okay, well, what's an action step to be AB honor roll? Study more, show up on time, get to know the teacher some level beyond, hey, hey bud, right? What else?
Find your spot.
Find your spot.
That's pretty study.
Yeah.
Talked about.
Yeah, study habits. Yeah, so the point is, like, whatever the goal is, think about what are the action steps, A1, A2, A3, whatever, that will help me get to that goal. And then put them somewhere where you're accountable to them, right? People don't do goals. I think the main reason is because it's accountability. Like, it hurts, like, I'm not doing it, right? So again, there's not a whole lot of things in life that are free. Goals are free. You just got to spend time and do them, right? That's a habit. That's a healthy habit, right? Leadership, man, we can talk about this all day. There's some people that say, hey, like, you're born with leadership. I think that's BS. Same thing with like EQ. There's people that say, hey, you're born with EQ. No, you can develop leadership skills. You can develop emotional intelligence skills. But it starts with awareness, right? I think leadership at a high level in any component is selfless, right? I call it the we versus me mentality, right? And athletics is a great parallel to the we versus me mentality. Like, when you're an athlete, it's very easy to become a me machine. It's like, hey, I want to get faster. I want to get stronger. I want to get bigger. I want to get better at this skill. And you kind of become involved with yourself. We machine, I'm worried about everybody else, not myself, right? You don't hear I when I talk. I talk about us collectively. Leadership's engaged, right? Like, leadership in this organization, like, you probably never walk in here and nobody recognizes you. Nobody says hi to you. Nobody addresses you, right? Like, that probably doesn't happen. Maybe if it does, everyone's going to the bathroom at the same time. But it's engaged. Like, they want to know how you're doing, right? Attitude, right? Charles Swindoll wrote a really neat poem on attitude and the power of an attitude. Like, man, there's so many things in your life that you have no say over. You have no say over all these idiots at these crosswalks.
I'm aware, yeah.
Right? But you do have control over how you respond to it, right? Like, I felt the same thing today when I drove in here, like, whoa. Like I kind of want to, like, just lay on the horn and, like, tell these dudes, like, hey, how do you respond to that, right? We've all been in the classroom with a bad kid. You've all been in the classroom with a great kid. It has a ripple effect. You can feel it. Same thing in a marriage. Same thing in a company, an organization. Bad attitude ripples out. So do good ones, right? So you choose. You choose what you want to I will tell you, attitude, positive attitude, good attitudes has a strong correlation to EQ. And like your overall self-awareness. Because EQ starts with self-awareness and then it goes down into self-management, right? Like. And think about self-awareness as like the dashboard in your car. The fuel light indicator's on. Self-management's like, what do I do about the fuel indicator? I like my wife and just ride until it fuels out. Do I pull over and get some gas? Right? Self-awareness, self-management. Okay? EQ's all about self-awareness. If you say to me, hey, so-and-so has really poor EQ. And I would ask, like, well, what does his or her relationships look like? And most of the time, if like somebody who has low EQ, their relationships are terrible. They're up and down, inconsistent. Because it's related to their self-awareness, which impacts their self-management, which impacts their relationship management. Passion, man, it's a big one for me. Like, I could really like hiring people over the years in city government. Like, I can give 3 craps about how smart you are and how many degrees you have. Like, why are you really here? Like, what are you passionate about? Like, what drives you? That's really it. And that's why I told you guys, like, spend time thinking about what you care about, what you're passionate about, what you like to do, what defines you outside of whatever career you're going to have, you know, figure out what that is. I heard about the strength find. You guys do some strength finder stuff. This is a great way to figure this out. It's kind of like cheat code, right? So pay attention to that stuff. That's super helpful. Accountability. Again, you guys were service members, like you totally get accountability. Well, congratulations, you're still accountable, right? Like everybody in here has a last name, right? You're accountable to your last name, if nothing else. You're accountable to this university, you're accountable to veterans. I think about like, when I think about this word, I think about like, hey man, I'm part of a community that's less than 2% of society. And like, I'm accountable to like dudes like this, Drew Jensen, right? He doesn't get to be a husband. He doesn't get to be a dad. Absolute dude. Didn't get to come home. Like, so I'm accountable to like pay that forward as a veteran because you guys are special. And then the last one is something I learned in the special operations community, and that is the ability to stay and be contagiously calm. That's a power skill, but like we've all worked for a boss that like gets way up here and gets way down there. What is that? Super annoying, right? It's terrible. But we've also worked for that guy or that gal that's like right in the middle. Right? They don't get too high, they don't get too low, just consistent. Right? Chaos is going around, doesn't matter. I'm right here. Right? Power skill. If you can create some awareness around, hey, how do I stay consistent? How do I keep my head? Right? This is a great one. Like, you can't execute at a high level or be great with any type of anxiety or self-doubt. Right? Like, what's your preparedness level look like? And as a student, as a young professional getting ready to enter corporate America, like, how prepared are you? You know, and take refuge in that. You know, I tell my kids when they're dealing with a little bit of self-doubt or maybe some imposter syndrome, like, hey man, rest in your preparedness. Like, you've practiced a lot. You've ran the race. Like, rest of it. And go out there and have fun. You know, it's that easy. So anyways, that's really my message for you today. That's my email. That's my Twitter and Instagram. You want to reach out to me that way. yeah, it's really an honor and a privilege to come today and share with you guys my story. And I wanted to kind of just open it up for some questions. If you guys have any questions, thoughts? Yeah.
What do you do, Quentin?
Yeah, I'm a leadership development consultant.